Good evening, folks, and welcome again to the ChefandtheGrape.com. I am a mustachioed Chef Christoph, and tonight, something new. I'm doing a vintage report, which I've never done before, so you'll forgive me if perhaps it's not as eloquent as it should be. But living here in British Columbia, in Canada, I wanted to talk a little bit about what the winemakers and winery owners went through this year, because it was a very unique year. It started off as something bucolic almost, and then came fires and smoke, and well, it was pretty intense for everybody. And I heard people talking about the vintage of 2015 and how it was going to be one of the best ever. And all I could think was, because I'm only one generation off the farm, and I thought, why isn't anyone talking about how hard these guys are working? We forget sometimes. It's wine, and so it's a luxury good. It's maybe something where people don't work as hard, right? Because, how hard do you have to work to make wine? You grow grapes, you crush them, that's about it, right? If only. So, this year, an interview with some of the absolute top people in this part of the world for winemaking, winery owners, and they're going to talk to you in their own words about what 2015 was for them. Have a listen. Welcome to the ChefandtheGrape.com. I'm your host, Chef Christoph, here at the largest tasting of BC wines in the calendar year. It's color, and so we here in BC are celebrating what should be the anticipation of harvest. And yet, for many winemakers, it's actually already 1/3 of the way through harvest. I'm here with winery owner and wine guru Sandra Oldfield from Tin Horn Creek. Sandra, thank you so much for making the time to come out today.
Thank you.
I just wanted to talk to you for a second. This year, for everybody, was filled with just a roller coaster of emotions. Can you tell me what it was like for you and the team at Tin Horn this year?
Yeah, it started out with being a month ahead, and that's pretty crazy because we've certainly never been a month ahead.
Right.
And then it eventually got to just about 2 weeks ahead, and still looking great. And we had some lightning strikes, and that started a fire, so we've been kind of dealing with that. But, we've been pretty blessed because the smoke was venting straight up, and even though 4 weeks later it's still burning, we're not really seeing any problems with it. So.
Right, but there was a time when people were getting a little bit nervous, right? There was definitely a threat of smoke taint on the grapes.
Oh, that threat is still there, and people are still testing them and seeing, But honestly, with smoke taint, it really has to be pervasive. You have to be right next to it typically,
right.
And it also has to last for quite a while. And then it really depends on what kind of grapes you're making. White, not a big deal. Light reds may be a problem. Heavier reds, sometimes not as much a problem. So, it's so. It depends so much on what you're doing and where you're at. It's hard to tell.
Right. So then, now that you are 1/3 of the way through, what's your feeling about this year's harvest?
Yeah, well, overall we're down a little bit in tonnage, so we're seeing that across the valley. So there might not be a large harvest this year, but everything has come in just perfect quality, and there's no threat of mold or rot. We haven't had that for 2 or 3 years. The grapes are overripe and ripe and full fruit flavors. I'd say the biggest nervousness that we had was that the hot summer sometimes tends to mute the fruit flavors, and you don't get that phenolic ripeness.
You weren't having that problem with the Cab Franc, though, were you?
Well, no, but really the problem is that, you need those cool nights, and we've got them now. Right. So grapes like the Cab Franc and the Gewurz, but especially the Cab Franc, as soon as the nights turn cool, like they started doing a couple weeks ago, they just shoot up in phenolic and sugar ripeness. So the Cab Franc, it's one of those grapes where it's kind of lagging behind in the horse race the whole year, and you're kind of nail biting it. And then as the cool nights come along in September, it just pours it on, and it finishes the race ahead of everybody else. Like, it's an absolute finisher. It's a closer, absolute closer.
Right, very cool. Sandra, thank you so much for making the time to talk with me today.
No problem, thanks.
Just finished my interview with Sandra Oldfield from Tinhorn Creek. Wanted to taste this Cab Franc that she's so excited about. I've tasted previous vintages. This, of course, is not this year's Cab Franc. This is 2013. In the glass, it's looking very pale russet color. Hopefully you can see a little bit of that. On the nose carries a lot of the savory herb tones that I'm so used to from the Oliver area. I call it South Okanagan Garrigue as a nod to France and that general herbaceousness. The fruit tones are there in plenty, but not just blackberries, currants, raspberry leaf. And on the palate, bright, brisk, clean, a beautiful tension to the acid. And underneath all the fruit, there's this beautiful sense of minerality that just brings the whole thing together. Fantastic wine, 90 plus points, but runs about $20, so stunning value. Welcome back to thechefandthegrape.com. Of course, I'm your host, Chef Christoph, still here at Color, and I'm lucky enough to be here with my very good friend, John Skinner from Painted Rock. John, thanks so much for making the time to be with me today.
Well, thanks very much. Very pleased to be here.
John, I've talked with a lot of people about how this year it really was a roller coaster of emotions. Why don't you tell me about your vintage and how it feels to be coming towards the tail end of it now?
Well, it's interesting because this vintage we're dealing with, it started very early. Everybody was enormously optimistic, and then all of a sudden we get smoke and fires and spiking sugars and everything. But the reality of this business that I've grown to understand now is that every year it's going to be one thing or another. I mean, right. in vintages previously, we've dealt with bears, we've dealt with wasps, we've dealt with an early start, a late start, a wet spell. There's hail. There's a myriad of things, and you learn just to roll the punches. And this year, I think we've got a really nice development that's happening right now, and that's that temperatures have come down substantially. And
actually, Sandra Oldfield was saying the same thing and saying thank God because
it's buying us time right now because we very fortunately had maintained quite a substantial canopy all along. So we've got a substantial canopy, and we didn't remove leaves. So we bought ourselves some time, and now we're in a situation where with cooler temperatures we're able to take a step back and just let the flavors evolve. The sugars are not off the charts. The acids are nicely in balance. So we're coming together.
So this year is going to be prove to be a pivotal year for Painted Rock. There's something very special happening. You want to?
Well, we've got. I think we've done a number of initiatives in the vineyard over the years now that are really culminating in exquisite balance. And right. Balance, what it does is, in previous vintages, we'd have to augment one varietal with something, and we'd have to, they're always tweaking and touching things up. What we've got now is perfect balance. We've got exquisite conditions, and I think we're looking at probably doing a single varietal Petit Verdot for the first time. Single varietal Cab Franc. We did one in 13, but we're going to do it again. I'm quite confident.
Right.
The Malbec is off the charts. So if we have these opportunities, because we're 100% estate, we don't commingle anything with anybody. So if we can dial in specificity, we're going to do it. And we should have something really exciting to offer from the 14 and 15 vintages.
So that's right, folks. It's the first Malbec from Skaha Lake. Pretty exciting stuff. John, thank you so much for making the time to be with me today.
Oh, my great pleasure. Always nice to see you, Christoph. Thank you.
Howdy, folks. Just finished my interview with John Skinner, fantastic fellow right behind me. Wanted to tell you he's too humble to talk about it, but he makes a rosé that's absolutely extraordinary. This year's vintage he's actually made with all 4 of the traditional Bordeaux varietals except for Cab Sauv. This is what it looks like in the glass. Oh my God, isn't that beautiful? It's like somebody, I don't know, bruised salmon, very ripe peach perhaps with a bit of amber. On the nose conveys just a whole myriad of ripe berry tones, cranberry, young raspberries, strawberries, obviously the currants as well. A little bit of that savory herbaceousness like you get around Oliver, but it tends to be different once you get up to Skaha Lake. And that's one of the things I really love about John's Rosé, is it has not just a brightness, not just a freshness to it, but truly, and I know I say this a lot, but a Burgundian sense of elegance and tension to it. It's really quite a stunning wine, and does not, I don't mean this to sound like an insult, but it doesn't taste at all like a New World wine. In fact, it tastes like the very best of Tavel almost. So stunning rosé, and if rosé's your thing, you got to give it a try. I give this 91 points, and I do that to virtually every vintage. And for just over $20, absolutely stunning value. This has to be on your list, especially Thanksgiving's just around the corner. This with turkey, amazing. Thanks, folks. I hope you enjoy it as much as I.